In Weirdmageddon Part 3, Bill Cipher invites Ford to his plush penthouse suite. There, he greets him with an old-time show tune, a glass of wine, and a proposition. Help Bill escape Gravity Falls' bubble and take over the universe, then he'd become an esteemed hench maniac, with powers beyond his wildest imagination. This particular scenario provides a couple of intriguing insights. It adds more depth to Bill's dynamic with Ford, as well as further fleshes out Bill's driving motivation. Bill extended the same hench maniac offer to Ford once before in Part 1, but in a more disrespectful and mocking way. Now, Ford holds something that he desperately wants. This time around, the offer is legitimate. Bill dropped his poker face and he's going for broke. He doesn't even try to play on Ford's pride, ego, or personal desires like he has in the past. Rather, he shoots straight for the ultimate power appeal. Then he reveals just how insane the scope of his overall ambitions are. He earnestly believes that his taking over the entire third dimension, from breaking physics to manipulating space-time and matter like Plato, is liberating. Bill's insanity is nothing new, but the depths of his mania certainly are. When describing his original two-dimensional universe, he comes across as angry and frustrated, placing strong emphasis on how everything was flat and boring. Almost as if that's ample justification for him going to whatever extremes he did to liberate his universe. Bill's frustrations strike a surprisingly similar chord with the protagonist of Edwin Abbott's novel Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. Edwin Abbott's Flatland follows the observations and life-changing epiphany of the humble lawyer A Squared. Bad math reference since Edwin's name was Edwin Abbott. He's a two-dimensional being that lives in a society of sentient geometrical figures, specifically male polygons and female lines. People are categorized into various castes according to how many sides and angles they have, with circles as the highest caste. Circles have more sides than any other polygon, setting them as nature's ideal rulers. Of course, people hope and pray that their offspring have the quintessential number of sides. More sides is the key to social mobility, higher status, better quality of life, etc. And since circles are the most revered shape, circles create the laws of the land, dictate who has access to certain levels of education, and even whether a person lives or dies. Over the course of describing his society, A Squared seems reluctant to comment on or critique his superiors. He's locked into the idea that circles are nature's most perfect beings. Then he meets Sphere, a visitor from the three-dimensional plane of Spaceland. Sphere goes so far as to escort A Squared into Spaceland, revealing what an extra dimension adds to the overall visual and sensory experience, as well as describing some of the basic tenets of three-dimensional space. A Squared can move upwards and has a wider range of motion than a strict left and right. Spheres hold an even greater, more perfect form than Flatland's circles. Cubes are the higher, more ambitious construction for a square than adding further sides and angles with each biological generation. A Squared's understanding of society, culture, and physics is snapped like a flimsy toothpick. He's humbled by this new knowledge, eagerly stepping into the role of Sphere's disciple of third-dimensional philosophy. As a curious scholar, he starts questioning Sphere about even higher planes. Is there a fourth, fifth, or even sixth dimension? If so, how does one ascend to such heights? A Squared returns to Flatland, tasked with spreading the doctrine of a higher third dimension. His attempts to describe and explain these otherworldly ideas are difficult without visual aid. The ideas seem so simple and common sense after he personally experienced them, but he can't map out three-dimensional shapes in his mind or on paper. Another restriction on him is the Circle's proclamation that bans anyone from bringing up the ludicrous possibility of higher dimensions. The punishment is imprisonment or death. A Squared becomes more enthralled by and obsessed with three dimensions, yet increasingly more frustrated by not being able to properly document these ideas. A predicament he describes as his ultimate melancholy. By the end of the novel, he tries, in vain, to describe his ideas to the High Circle Council. He ends up imprisoned, deterred, and depressed. In short, A Squared gives a direct, tangible answer to the grand existential question of How does the universe work? He's humbled, awed, and driven slightly mad by this discovery. Please note that I focus specifically on A squared meeting Sphere and traveling to Spaceland. He also travels to Lineland, a one-dimensional plane, and Pointland, a no-dimensional plane, as well. Both fuel his desire to create a cohesive picture of a grand, elegant universe, if not his ardent desire to show everyone in Flatland the truth. Now, let's put Bill Cipher into A squared's daunting position, discovering that grand epiphany that higher dimensions exist. Though, honestly, I think Bill's nature was tied with a horrible paradox from the beginning. He's a two-dimensional being with the knowledge of higher dimensions, since otherwise, he couldn't use his powers quite as effectively without this knowledge. Bill Cipher is a dream demon with seemingly omnipotent powers, but these are restricted to the mindscape. In essence, Bill creates illusions and distorts images. Without control of matter and substance, Bill can only project something that looks three-dimensional, but is really only two-dimensional. The knowledge of how to create three-dimensional illusions from two-dimensional shapes is a potent knowledge that makes Bill's existence a paradox. He can learn the worst fears of three-dimensional beings, create projections and images of said fears, and play trick-up-his-sleeve magician, but there's only so far such powers can go. Three-dimensional beings are safe from his nightmarish wrath due to existing on a higher plane alone. Bill is restricted to very short forays into the mindscape. Each foray is a brief, tantalizing taste as to what he could try in third-dimensional space. Otherwise, he's a two-dimensional being trapped in two-dimensional space. This bit of information is exactly what frustrates and infuriates Bill. He's capable of much grander, better things than what he can currently do. If he can climb up the ladders of higher and higher dimensions, the scope of his powers grows. Just the idea of how much potential he has and how inferior his world is compared to others drives Bill mad. After he truly breaks and transcends his dimension's physics, then destroys his original universe, he is further convinced of his possible omnipotence. He wasn't exactly an altruistic or stable mind before, but that's more than enough to kick him into an all-consuming mania. He's broken laws of nature once. He can, and will do so, again and again. Another interesting detail about Bill, arguably, when Bill gained a physical three-dimensional form, he carried the knowledge and perspective of a fourth-dimensional being. He could distort space-time and mold matter down to its smallest subatomic particles. Think back to the difference between Sphere and A squared. Sphere could look at and dissect the finer points of A squared's two-dimensional world. In Bill's case, he held the upper hand in destroying his original universe because of how much he knew about higher dimensional planes. He has the same perspective over the course of Weirdmageddon for the finer points and makeup of a third-dimensional world. Sphere was a kindly and patient visitor looking for an apprentice. Of course, Bill Cipher is the antithesis of just that. He feigns a generous nature, but really, Ford is the necessary kingpin for his ambitious plan. Bill was, in some respects, a two-dimensional physicist toying with models and evaluations of higher planes. While Bill is incredibly observant and knowledgeable, he can only go so far. He is restricted by the worldview and perspective of a two-dimensional being. What legwork he conducted to break his dimension's physics provides a fantastic foundation and starting point for Ford. One advantage he has over Bill Cipher is that he is a natural, three-dimensional being. He can determine where the seams of three-dimensional space are and create a workable, tentative model of a fourth dimension. Math is Ford's equivalent to Bill's projections and illusions. Ford is more likely to devise a plan and schema. Bill needs to go even further and further, gaining a physical form, escaping gravity falls, and beyond. Considering how readily and eagerly Ford accepted Bill's original offer in the last Mabelcorn, Ford does share something in common with Bill, the desire to develop a coherent picture of the bigger universe. Of course, Ford's motivation is mired in scholarly intrigue and yearning for enlightenment like A squared. Bill is insatiable in his desire to find the ultimate, perfect nature of the universe. No plane or dimension is perfect until he liberates them from how restrictive and narrow their understanding of reality overall is. When Bill presents his logic to Ford, for a moment, he honestly entertains the idea that Ford is a kindred spirit. Perhaps Bill's hinged maniacs share his insane philosophy. It's not just about how freaky or sadistic they may be. They may have contributed meaningful and significant insights to Bill's hungry quest. On some crazy level, Bill may have wanted to befriend Ford.